And if you do, I won't just leave it. Okay, good evening, everybody.
There's a few more turning up.
Oh, right, okay, so we'll just give them a couple of minutes. In fact, we'll record now anyway. Hello, Karen, how are you? Steve's there, Simon's there.
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
How's it going with the ergo?
Yeah, I've got a few blisters. But,
yeah, but it was really, it's really important. Actually, I mean, Lee put me in contact. There's a bloke called Steve West. You probably know about him. He's a multi-paddle sports guru, really. You know, paddle boarding. He's lived all over the world. He's spent his whole life designing boats and really understands the way boats work, water works. And I've been listening to an interview that Lee's just sent me through. And he's talking about a lot of people getting into a sport, blasting into a sport, burning out, maybe doing some competition, having their egos bent out of shape because there's selection and there's deselection, all this sort of stuff, and not achieving what they want, and getting basically pissed off and leaving the sport. And he's talking more about sort of, when I say easing into it, I don't mean sort of taking years and years and years, but, you know, coming into it in a sensible sort of way and letting the wave pick up rather than going smashing into it and letting it destroy you. So in a mini way, what I'm talking about with this ergo stuff is, well, you can go on an ergo and you can do 40 strokes a minute, 45 strokes a minute and burn out. Or you can actually think about it. How can I actually make this a little bit better? And this is really what we're talking about today. It's just one little facet. So that's me, Zip. Let me hand over to Lee, because Lee's the point man in Hong Kong and he's going to talk to you about all sorts of things. And any questions you want, then come straight in, because if we don't understand it as paddlers or coaches or whatever, then we change the message. Right. It's not the American style culture of the coach. Shut up and listen. No, it's yes, interact, make sure you understand it. Yeah. So that's the way we are. Lee, my friend, over to you. I've said enough already.
Well, I'd like a few more people online. Is there it? Because here we go.
Okay.
Because I was just going to look. So Tim's asked me just to go through how I'm sort of going to start off with once we can actually get on the water, and how I think the stroke is going to go. And again, it's something that is going to generate itself, and I just want to put the wheels in motion, all right, based on what I know and my experience. And there's a lot of people out there have got more experience than me, and we can put our heads together. But the way I see it, if you don't already know, and I'll just sort of look at it from the top down as the big picture. My personal perspective is, with my background, is that we actually go for something very similar to an outrigger stroke to do this. In the past, for generations, it's always been a typical sort of Stanley style, A style, etc., etc. I think that we're going more. Most of the people are doing outrigger these days. And I find that from a physiology point of view, it's better to do it this way. And I've done a lot of experimenting and backwards and forwards in boats, swells, different waters. So basically, when I say an outrigger stroke, that doesn't mean that it's a bog standard outrigger stroke either. What I'm trying to say, or when I say outrigger, is that I believe that it shouldn't be this totally upright position, A-frame type of stroke, right? I like to, or when I present it to people that I take out, whether they're in a dragon boat or outrigger, it doesn't matter to me. It's more of a fundamental, keep the shoulders down, keep them relaxed, elbows down, keep them relaxed. So you're kind of in this position, everything's relaxed and hanging rather than stiff and upright and open. That doesn't, again, mean that we don't have an open stroke, right? We progress into an open stroke. Basically, with this, I like to say, I like to use things like momentum, using the body weight, the head weight, slingshot, stuff like this, put into a sequence. And when I say sequence, it's kind of like, you've locked your body in the boat, you're hinged at the waist, you can use your body and your head going forward. When you throw your head forward, and I don't mean like it comes off its shoulders, but I mean you're swinging your body and your head, chest first, head up, going forward. That alone, without taking a stroke, is going to push the boat forward, right? It gives the boat momentum. You can do it as a drill. If you get 20 guys in a boat, you can rock a boat. You can make it go forward. You can make it go back. You can make it spin on the spot if you're good. all right? And these are the initial things that create movement in water without even taking a stroke. And as Tim said earlier, you know, we can all go battle axing it in the water with a paddle and it just creates a lot of fluff. So this is the first perspective that I want to sort of chuck out there, is like getting that body motion, that body movement, and getting momentum in the boat. So the body starts off with a swing. You've got chest, you've got body, you've got head. Your head's the heaviest part of your body, and bang. The boat will go forward. And then after your body or chest is forward, your arms are going to follow with the blade, all right? So the blade actually follows after. It's a very split second after. It looks the same time, but it isn't. It's actually just after. And that, again, gives like a whiplash swing into position. Into position means that then you go into a set. You will set the blade, which is more of a spear. We'll go into that later. You spear, you lock, you've got the angle. Blade is in the water, it's progressively coming down. Now, that's a very big subject because you're entering into the word catch. Again, we'll go heavily into that later. But like, where I'm going with this is that you've got a double whammy. You've got momentum from body swing, you've got a grip and a pull from the stroke itself and a power phase. So you're getting like complete momentum and agility of the boat moving through water, okay? And what you don't realize, and you probably realize more in a 6-man actually, is that the boat feels like it's moved before you've even done any work. And that's what I think, and Adam, you'll probably know, like that's what we call a G spot, I think, is it's like, where did that movement come from? It was just a sweet spot that we just want to get to. And it's like, wow, it's moving. And because that happens and the boat's moving, when you plant the blade, sometimes we mention things, or I will mention things like, you don't have to beef it in the water. Now, other people interpret that as ease off and they come off and speed drops. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is keeping resistance on the blade, yes, but without breaking resistance on the blade, keeping it where it is, so that you're constantly moving the boat forward at the same time as what I call one-to-one, moving the blade forward, moving the blade, actually the blade will go down and the boat will go forward, okay? And then we get into other interpretations of like blade coming back. The blade, to me, the blade doesn't come back. It looks like it comes back, but it shouldn't actually be coming back. It slips slightly, yes. The blade, when it enters the water, right, it goes in. And if you think pole vaulting, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard it before, right? If I use the analogy pole vaulting, a pole vault will go in, it will lock, and you will fling yourself over the top. In a canoe with a dragon boat paddle, you can't lock the blade like that. So the blade will go in and it will gradually start to go down as you go over. So in effect, it goes in, drops down and continues up and over, right? So that's actually what's happening. If you do it slowly, you'll feel the grind, the grip, the resistance, like in a start piece. When you watch paddlers, they look like they're not doing anything. That's because they've already got boat speed. The boat is moving. Once the boat's moving, they're still doing the same thing, except the speed of the boat is catching up with the blade a lot quicker. So it looks like they're not doing anything, but in fact, they are still going in, going down, and catapulting every stroke. Okay, so that kind of stuff's still happening. And again, we'll go through a lot of this in more depth and detail, so you can ask a lot more questions about aspects of that. So yeah, and other things connected with that are like when I paddle personally, I have several different strokes. I don't just have one. It's not like, and I hate to say it, oh, it's a Tahitian stroke, it's a Hawaiian stroke, it's a Stanley stroke, sorry, right? It's just a stroke that matches what the water's doing, right? At the end of the day, you need to get a proper catch like I just described, and you need to do it any way you can. Sometimes if you're going long distance, I can bring the rating right down and I'll be right out the back. I don't care. It's out the back, but I'm getting beef out of it. But then I tend to sit up more. I hinge from the waist. I hinge forward, I hinge back. Some people say don't hinge. Well, it depends where I am in the stroke and what water I'm on and what I'm doing. So in effect, what I'm saying is there's horses for courses with regards to stroke technique and style, right? And that's what we need to determine what we're doing in each section of the race or the race pieces. It's not, you know, we can do different things, you know, like we talk about chug, right? Most people understand the word chug. We talk about the start, we talk about the finish, a burst, of this, of that, right? Now, they're all different styles of paddling with certain stroke dignity within the water and what you're doing. But we need to understand those and how we change and adapt to create and still keep the same catch, regardless of where we are within that section of the race. So, yeah, I mean, going back to the outrigger style, you know, I use sort of relaxed shoulders, elbows down. I find it a stronger positioning. I can still plant, I can still get the angle, and I can still squeeze, all right? I don't have to overreach, but I still need to reach. With that, in a certain part of the race, I will hinge from the waist. Now, most people that I come across these days, especially in Hong Kong, rotate. Now, there's rotation in the stroke, yes, there is. But I don't sort of say rotate, because most people rotate at the wrong time, all right? So it's how you interpret the word rotate or when to use it, all right? A lot of people I come across rotate immediately like this, and they take their head with them. So the head goes up to the sky, or they look under their arm. And so they're not looking forward, their spine's buckled, they're gonna do themselves an injury, okay? So they've rotated before they've taken the stroke. I'm looking at more going forward on a hinge, rotate to get the blade vertical, and then doing the catch and the whole movement and power phase, okay? And again, those things can be adjusted as and when, all right? But they're the things that I'll be looking for in a stroke, all right? I believe dead straight, head straight, relaxed, down. You must be centralized in the boat, locked in. You don't lean over a boat. How many people have I seen, right, absolutely twisted spine, leaning out the boat and, you know, doing that kind of thing? Yes, there is a certain amount of lean, you know, we give and take. But generally, you need to be pretty straight in the boat. You need to keep your head straight. Because without the head straight, you actually lose what's happening between your neck and your lower region, hips, all right, your hips. So, which is your core, all right? So your core will just go out of place if you haven't got your head straight, which means you're using the wrong muscle groups, okay? And then there's legs. I mean, we haven't talked about it. Some people don't go into legs. Some people mention it, you know, I will be using legs, hip drive, swing, momentum. Right? There's a whole bunch of things that I'll be going into, and I will explain each one as we go along, probably on the water when we can talk and demonstrate clearly. All right, it's a bit difficult here and now. Start pieces, you know, again, that's a big open subject. I do have a couple of theories on it, and I think everybody's entitled to stick their theory forward, because we've all, you know, there's enough experience out here on here tonight just to even look at what things should be done. You know, we've talked about and we've done, you know, Adam, you know, again, Steve, you know, we've done the dead vertical start, bang, you know, the half 3/4 thing. And personally, I don't 100% not like it. I still do it, but I keep it vertical, but I put an angle on it still so that you can lean on it. And if the blade, you know, it's like if the blade's flat on the water, you've got 100% resistance. So I try, you know, some of the teams I've been experimenting with, it's like I tell them to keep just a slight angle at the same half, and then you can bounce it a little bit better. You can like boom with an angle. You don't necessarily, you know, you don't have to kill yourself on it, but you do, you know, you're still trying to lift the boat at the end of the day on 1, 2, 3 strokes. you know, and then you go straight into what you said before, you know, you've got the 2, the 3, you build, you build, you build. How we build depends who we got in the boat, depends how you're paddling, depends on your stroke technique, depends how we train for the next whatever months and it takes us to actually get there. All right. So, and then, you know, and then there's like, you know, legs are very important. We grossly underestimate our legs, our hips, and our sitting position, and how we actually use the power from our legs through the body, which brings us back to there's actually a sequence of how you use your body from your feet, legs, hips, core, arms, all the way through to your blades, and then connect to the water. Right. So that's a cycle. If you break that cycle, like if you didn't use your legs and you just went from your hips to your core, you've lost power and you've lost a sequence. And so if 5 people in the boat lose that, we've lost quite a bit of power in the boat. So, you know, if we're looking at a 20 or a 10-man boat, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be looking at. That's the kind of stuff that we need to train, put it together, get the sequence right, get the mobility, the muscle groups all firing, working when we require it and when we want them. Okay. And then once we've got that, then we can then go ahead and start to put together pieces. We can start to do our intervals. We can start to do, you know, all the usual work that we want to do, and, you know, basically break a lot of not bad habits, but different clubs styles, because we need to be one style at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, we might even look slightly different when we're paddling, but as long as we've got the same fundamentals going through our body systems and in the boat, then we should have a boat that's going to work. That's all I've got for you right now. So I don't know, Tim, anyone?
I'm going to bring you back in a minute, because I mean, what's really important about this, I mean, it sounds condescending. I call this intelligent paddling. It's paddling on purpose. It's thinking about what you're doing. And each stage of the race, whether you call it the start sequence, the various gears you're going through, the start, the transition piece into, I know it's a Hong Kong term. I don't like that term chug myself. I say it with a wry smile, because to me, chug sounds like heavy, lethargic. That's just my interpretation. What I want is lively, active, thinking on purpose, thinking your way down the race course. Because like I say, 500 meters, you may only have 130 strokes. So you've got to make each stroke count. So that's what I mean. Proactive paddling is better than intelligent paddling, but that's what it is. And I'll pick up, when I say pick up, I'll mention a few points, because it's given me some ideas that Lee has said. It's really important for me, really vitally important to me, that we hear from Lee and others in the squad, different parts doing coaching, because we need to be talking the same language. So if Lee's talking about pole vaulting, I'm talking about pushing the boat past the paddle, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but what it means is in Hong Kong, we'll talk in this way, and I may use slightly different language, but it's the same thing in different parts of the world. But it's important that you're getting the same message, even though you get it with a slightly different accent or whatever it's going to be. So that's important. I think you've probably got to be aware that it may be that the stroke that we opt for, that we generate, will be slightly different to the one you're paddling at your normal clubs, and that's got to be the way it is. It doesn't have to be the way, but it's just a case of you as an intelligent paddler realizing that with this club we do it slightly this way we do it this way, but that's fine. Very often there's a lot of cross-pollination with it, but that's just the way it is. Okay, but what we're aiming to do is draw on all sorts of experience and work out the best way of doing stuff all round. Yeah, I'm gonna mention a few other things, but I'm gonna draw Lee back in, because we can learn a huge amount from the sport of outrigging. There are some fundamental differences, not least the shape of the paddle, not least the fact there's less of you in the boat. The weight of the boat is proportionately the same in terms of what you're paddling, but how you're generating the power. Now, what you mentioned, Lee, was the lower, flatter. It's very similar to the US East Coast stroke, the Philadelphia stroke. But then you mentioned as you get into the chug, into the body of the race, then you're opening up a bit more. Now, I don't advocate big
No, I know.
A-frame, but it's more of a unlocked lat. So how
No,
would
that's
you
just what I see. That's what I see with some of the teams I take out. The first thing they do is just, you know.
Oh, it's like theatre. It's just 1980s. You know, lay down on the gunnel, and you're thinking, well, yeah, you're putting that much effort into the setup. Clearly, some of the effort you're putting into the setup, you can't put into the power phase. So it's about efficiency. So how would you see that stroke maybe at this point in time evolving? So you start off obviously as powerful as you can, shorter stroke, get the boat moving, up out the hole, as Andy would say. But then how would it develop through the stroke?
Yeah, well, I mean, your start piece is going to start from a low gear, building. It's going to get faster and faster. When you're going faster, you're going to be coming out the water earlier. Now, some people go short and still come out the back. The idea is to keep the front end, no matter what you do, and stay forward. So when you're paddling, you're going to stay forward, but you're going to come out earlier. So in effect, although the stroke is shorter in the water, it's because you're leaning forward more and you're coming out earlier. So you're constantly coming up rather than just coming back short and coming back, which is chip, chip, chop, chop. You're still going up to the front and coming out and out, but you're staying forward and coming out earlier. That's in the speedster. That's in your tens. You know, just before you hit your body, your main piece. When you get into your body, right, your body's going to go into a different system. So when you're when your body's going through a different system, you know, and you hit the wall, you know, you need the oxygen and you need the power. That's when you really need the power. So I find personally, and I'm sure everyone else does, because everyone feels the same. As soon as you get into the main body, right, the rating is going to drop because you need the oxygen. And as it drops, you're going to sit up more because you want to catapult higher more. And so you're actually going to open. I find that I open the stroke a bit more as I go through into the main body piece. All right, it's not down here because I'm not up front more. I can sit up tall and get a much bigger stroke as we go into the body. Because by that point we should be planing. It should be a little bit easier. You need to start breathing. You need to open the lungs more. You don't want to crease your lungs by being too far forward, right? Which is what you're going to do in the first 20 strokes, right? So you need to start, getting that system of air in, air out, and that's, your chug or your body, your main body piece. And so the stroke will open up. But again, it's not going to be up here. It's just that you're going to open the chest more. So you're going to come open here as opposed to boom, boom. So, what the difference is between the two, I don't know. How big are you? How fat are you? How small are you? Whatever. That's you, that's your stroke. But it's going to be the same for each individual person, no matter what size or shape you are. But that's what your body's going to go through. That's what's going to happen. And again, then when you come to the end of the race, it's all going to come back down again. You're going to find it get tighter and tighter and quicker, and we start to pick up pace towards the end. In fact, in the nationals, it's probably going to be like that all the way through. But there will be a point where you have to sit up, open up, and get more oxygen in.
Yeah. So we're talking about a couple of concepts that we've touched on already. The first is in your start piece, your start sequence, going through the gears. Maybe if you have a pulse or a burst or a tactic in the middle of another rolling race start, that's your explosive strength. Yeah. And of course, your bigger piece is your strength endurance. Now, I've got to say, we've talked about this before, about how you open up, whether you open up that way or more that way. It's clearly not there, but you need to increase your capacity to take oxygen in, because you're going to get anaerobic. But the best way to go anaerobic, if you think about it, is don't breathe at all. You go anaerobic straight away. The next way to go anaerobic is to reduce your ability to take in air. So head down on the chest and reduce that ability. So at some point in this, if we're going for 500 meters, even 200 meters, we've got to open up to a certain extent to get that air in. So it's a physiological thing as well, because what we want to do, I know it depends how fit you are and how conditioned you are, you want to stay top end into anaerobic, but top end aerobic for as long as possible, as efficient as possible. That means you can go harder for longer. Simple as that. So this is what we're talking about here. But ultimately, whether it's more there or more there, the point is the whole thing's got to open up to a certain extent. But like I say, whether you go for that more flatter style or a slightly bigger style, then we're going to measure it, evaluate it, assess it, and test it. And that's the point, you see. But we're not going to be doing that ad infinitum. There'll come a point in the fairly near future where we say, right, this is what we're going for, and then we want everyone to do it. And that's it. And the training will reflect that. And just to mention one other thing, we talked about it yesterday. I was talking to Lee. I mean, Lee and I, and probably you actually, especially in outrigger, have probably got a variety of different strokes. You may hold the paddle in different places to achieve different effects. Now, if we said to you, we're going to teach you 20 different variations, you'll say, what? But the point is, it's going to be some fundamentals that we're going to go for. So we're going to say, when we do our start sequence, going through the gears, we're going to do this. When we go into the transition, we're going to do this. When we go into the chug or the body of the race or the whatever, this is what we're doing. If we do a tactical piece, like we increase it to overtake somebody or move past somebody in a 2K, we're going to do this. So we'll teach you what we're doing. So we're not saying to you, we want you paddling 20 different strokes at different times. Just knowing what effect you're trying to achieve and doing that. What do you say to that, Lee? Agree?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? You can make it to, at the end of the day, it's paddling, isn't it? It's paddling the boat. We want to
I mean, when I say I change my stroke, I mean, it isn't anything sort of major. It's just, if you're going for a bump, it could be quick, it could be long, it could be deep, it could be a number of things, and it might only be for a few strokes. You're on a single craft, it's light, it's easy to lift it, it just depends. But that's outrigger. Obviously, that ain't going to happen so obviously in a dragon boat. But with 20 people doing something that we can call, it is going to make a difference. And that comes back to sort of like using the surf, a bit of surf sort of technique in Hong Kong waters in a dragon boat, because that's possible.
Yeah.
Just taking it another place there.
And you may have seen, I mean, I'm sure you all, when you started paddling, or you'll pick somebody, say in Hong Kong, that you know who is a proper expert water person. You can't say waterman anymore, water person, and you'll see they're paddling hard, and it looks like they're effortless. Well, that's people say good technique takes time. Technique is free speed, but that's the efficiency. I mean, I remember paddling with Andy Cummings. We did a time trial in 2017. He was in 1:01. I was alongside him. We did a K. We did pretty much the same time, but it was fairly obvious to me that I was working much harder than he was. He was paddling hard. He's working hard, but I could see the effort he was putting in, because he was just working the water more intelligently than I am, and that's where we want to go to. It's going on to the red line, not into the red mist, and that's what it's about, as being as intelligent as we can. Because if you think about it, if we can maximize our efficiency, then the effort we're putting into it is that much greater. As simple as that. Well, I say as simple as that. That takes a bit of time. Okay. Any thoughts? Any ideas? Any disagree violently? Agree equally violently? What do you think, Jonathan? What do you think?
Hi everyone. Glad I'm not hiking the hills of Hong Kong tonight, but I'll be doing it tomorrow morning. Yeah, Lee definitely sort of got the right sort of points across. For me, I think from 2 years ago, pretty much I think the last time I paddled in a dragon boat, I felt that there was a totally difference in stroke depending on whether a guy looks like he's about 6'8", right? I'm about 6 foot, right? We've got all these different types of people, and what got lost in that stroke was the length of people's stroke. So the taller people with the longer reach have to be more forward. We have to be coming out at the same time. We have to be then going back in. You had a lot of concertina effect. Of course, we're hitting generally the water at the same time, but we weren't coming out at the same time. It was faster, shorter, and also then cardio strength came into it. So I think there's a lot more that we need to be doing in terms of responsibility of each paddler. And what I mean by that is understanding what your team stroke needs to be rather than your individual stroke. So a lot of that, because everything we looked at was like, oh, great, we're all here, whether it's I-frame, whatever frame we were, right? I agree with Lee as well, to be a little bit more free. I do believe in the sort of I suppose in Hong Kong, I do believe in the dragon ball right? To keep that distance with your hands away, not coming too close into your chest. I see that I coach, and that's the biggest issue I see. I still think we need a disconnect between, the arms need to be connected with the body, right? And if you break that too much, then you bring in inconsistency. So that's the one thing I always look for is in terms of a consistent, repeatable stroke. So look, lots of great things. I think I'm getting on the water again on Sunday for the first time in a long time. So it'll be a train wreck, but I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, no, I think good. That there were some points from my perspective, and then there's so much that Lee was going into that I think we're only going to really find out once we get on the water together.
Two points there which are absolutely fundamentally important. Blending. You know, you can be training massively hard, doing all sorts of stuff in your own time, doing CrossFit, doing this, doing that, running up and down the road with logs, whatever you're doing. But what it comes down to is maximize. You've got to work together. So very early on, you know, if we work out that, say, for example, John, you're an ideal seat pair with Adam, then we need to be working you together. And then it becomes easy when it comes to selecting crews and that sort of thing. Then we take a plug out and we put it somewhere else. You see what I mean? But once you're a seat pair, a seat four, whatever it's going to be, the whole thing becomes that much easier in terms of trim. But blending will come into that. But you mentioned something else which I've not heard. I think I know what you mean. Dragon ball. Tell me what that is. I think I know what you mean, but just so we understand the term.
This is what we use in Tai Chi, right? It's like this thing in front of you where you don't sort of collapse your arms in and break too much. So you've got to feel that the arms and everything is connected. Because of course, then you're engaging your back muscles. You allow your outside leg to be really engaged. So everything, to what Lee was saying about being more less mechanical. I see a lot of mechanical strokes, right? But I think you've still got to be able to keep that distance and that control, because also the moment you break, you're a bit out the back. Now, I'm not a great OC1 or OC. I don't do OC6, right? And I don't know whether that's the stroke. I'm not very good at it, but it's certainly in Dragon Boat, I want to be very still forward. And the moment I see people breaking, right, what's happening is they're flicking water behind, they're coming far too far out. And of course, guess what? They're rushing through the stroke. And this obviously happens in the endurance, let's call it the endurance piece of the race. This is definitely what's happening. People are getting tired. Minds aren't focused, right? So we want to get through to this sort of getting really tired, getting really frustrated in terms of our training, and then really seeing whether people break down. Yeah. And that's really where you've got to be training. You can't be training at the good stuff, right? Oh, look, we were fantastic for the first 20 strokes. You know, that's important. And I've got some thoughts in that regard about how to really sort of get the power through. Lee, what you said at the angle was right at the start. I just don't feel I've ever seen that many teams really aggressively hit the start stroke as I would expect them to. And I think even GB 2 years ago, I don't think in the small man boat, we didn't have that real explosive start. And that also, we got to look at how people are training in the gym. I see a lot of people pushing, right? Lots of pushing exercises, great big chest. I'm like, this is a pulling sport, right? Show me how much you can pull and you'll be able to really sort of drive through the boat. So the long and the short of it is, I think connection through the arms being connected with the rest of the body, strong cores, and obviously engaging a lot of those big back muscles as well.
I'm agreeing, and I'm agreeing and disagreeing as well, because whilst pulling is obviously a fundamental part of it, it's really the whole body, isn't it? It's the whole mechanism of everything. So you wouldn't train stuff in isolation, which I know what you mean.
No, not at all. But let's get off the posy muscles and get into the ones that really actually do make a fundamentally big difference.
Okay, let me bring in Adam. You were going, no. What were you going? What? Just give us some perspective.
He might be my partner, according to you, but let me watch it.
Oh, who knows? If it works.
Yeah, sorry, was I nodding a bit aggressive, shaking my head a bit aggressively? I think paddling is a very much pushing sport, not a pulling sport at all. If anybody's watched the Ivan Lawler, very, very good K1 technique video, the moment you start to pull, you start to lift the blade out of the water, which is defeating. You have to be pushing the blade down in front of you. I agree, Jonathan, exactly what you were saying about your Dragon Ball thing. You do not want any collapsing, because the moment you collapse, your arms start to close. both your top arm and your bottom arm can close, and then you're not using your body, you're using your, that there's no power in that at all. So going back to the Ivan Lawler video, what he says is your top hand should be where you would do a bench press, because you have to create a fixed point with your top hand. In paddling, you have two fixed points. One is your foot on the foot plate or the dragon boat line. The other fixed point in another sport, you would have it given to you, but in paddling, you have to create it, and you create it by locking your top hand there and moving around it, if you know what I mean. So it's the moment you start pulling, you immediately shorten the distance the blade's going to travel in a stroke. So you have to push down, lift yourself up. Pole vault analogy, or I think Tim's got another analogy. You're moving past the blade is exactly that. So if you were to stick a GPS on your blade, you wouldn't want it moving in the water. It should be still, and you move past it. So you pole vault past it. So yeah, I view it as a pushing sport. I mean, give you a good analogy. I took a girl out just a couple of days ago, and I'm a surf ski addict. I've got 9 surf skis in my backyard, and she heard and she wanted to give it a go. And she said, "Oh, I'm a really good paddler. I was in the Australian team, National Australia dragon boat team, and I've outrigged with, and I know the team." She said Stormies, and I said, "Okay." I could not get her to lock her lat and to compress her body past the blade. She was doing this. And she paddled for Team Australia doing that, which is pulling. The shoulder. It was a bit of bicep, but mostly shoulder. It was this pulling. Whereas what Lee was talking about is, I mean, Lee's given us 2 examples. I think they both work. One is the rotation push. So you rotate round, you lean on the blade, and you rotate over the blade. Or the other one, I think, is very much a Chinese sort of style stroke. A lot of the fishermen do it, is where you go out, plant the blade, and basically you deadlift over it, which I've never tried, but I think it could work. Obviously, you've got big muscles, but in both cases, I think the important thing is that your arms they can be broken, but you don't want them. I think what you're referring to is that once you've got them in place, you leave them there, and then you let the body and the hips and the legs do the work, and the arms just cling onto the blade, and that's what they're doing. They're clinging onto the blade while your body does its thing. So Ivan Lawler refers to it as broken arms. You don't want them dead straight, but not breaking. You don't want them moving. Wherever you set them up. Now, if you're at the start piece, or where obviously you're in a low gear, or even if you're halfway down the course and the boat's in a hole, when you get that sort of sticky feeling, you might have to shorten your stroke, but you keep it there just to get it out. And then once you're cruising, you can lengthen your arms because obviously then the boat's moving faster. You can get more leverage to get that. And I think one of the things Tim was talking about was that sort of opening up sort of thing. And how I like to call it is being patient through the stroke. So you want to paddle at the same speed as the boat, but not faster than the boat, because the only way you can paddle faster than the boat is either if you're cavitating or your body's collapsing, and that's when you start to do the push-pull thing, because you can paddle faster than the boat if you do that. And when you watch the Tahitians, and it looks like their boat is like, how can they paddle so slowly and move the boat so quickly? It's because they're paddling so in tune with what they're moving their body in tune with what the boat's doing, and just keeping it there. And then I think you can have, as Puss said, different kinds of strokes. You can have one sort of keep it there cruising stroke, where you're in tune with what the boat's doing. The boat's actually dictating how fast you paddle. And then at times you say, well, hold on, the boat's not going fast enough. We need to bang it a bit. And then you'd have more of a sort of explosive, where sort of that kind of stroke where you don't squeeze the stroke, you hit the stroke, maybe just for 5 or 6 strokes to get it up again. And then the boat's up, and then you can go back to your sort of cruisy squeeze. It's not a cruisy squeeze, it's a hard squeeze, but yeah. Sorry, I waffled a bit there.
No, it's interesting points. I mean, I'm not familiar. I know Ivan Lawler. Before I got into dragon boats, I was a kayaker. So kayak surf ski is really my first love, if you like. relatively speaking, the lever is shorter, the pivot point is different, and it depends if you're talking about endurance kayaking, as in race endurance, or sprint kayak. Sprint kayak, it's all top end, and it's only 20% legs, if that. The more, so it's different. But the point is, I'm agreeing with what you say. I'm more in favour of the pulling side of things. But the point is, we can try all different things. But what you're saying and what you're describing is, it's not at odds with anything. It's the same sort of thing. But what I don't want people thinking about is if they've got a paddle in their hand, there's a push and a pull aspect to it. Because the way, I know, it depends. This is why language is important. Because with a kayak, obviously you've got a wing blade. And the fundamental difference between a kayak blade and a dragon boat blade is catch starts with a kayak at first touch. And with the wing shape, it's got the high pressure, low pressure, and it's different. With a dragon boat blade, we've got to work that catch a bit more and get the thing fully buried before we start driving back. So there are some fundamentals. And whilst I agree with you in terms of efficiency of paddling, then we've got to fine tune that, because Ivan Lawler is not a dragon boater. He is first and foremost a kayaker, and a superb kayaker at that. And whilst there's lots we can learn, and in fact, personally, I'd say kayaking is very, very close to dragon boating, but in the same way that outrigger is as well, there are some fundamental differences. So the important thing is to examine those and make sure we're, whilst I'm agreeing with you, using the right language, because people quite easily interpret that as being, it becomes a push and a pull stroke, which I know you're not saying, as opposed to the pivot points up here. So however we're generating that power, whether it's here or up here, the fulcrum point is here and not in the middle of the paddle. But exactly. But like I say, it's only through discussion. You say, actually, no, that yes, and actually, let's try that or whatever. So that's fine. That's fine. David,
I think. Sorry, just Tim, just what you were saying there. I think because you're doing a lot of these exercises, I saw you using the bands and everything. I think this is fundamentally where we don't want to be blowing out. Hopefully, we get back on the water in Hong Kong. So rotator cuffs, etc., all of these things. Certainly if we're going to think about the stroke slightly different from club stroke, that can have an impact on the body. So I think just really fundamentally breaking it down to those important elements. And I think what Adam was saying was, yeah, definitely it's a push, but it's obviously a shoulder. Like this is all rotation at the start of the stroke. That's going to drive the blade fully under the water, and then, depending on timing, I'd be interested to see Lee's stroke and see where it's different from the way we've been trained, because we're very traditional dragon boat team. I think that's going to be really interesting, right? But I think fundamentally, at some point, there's going to be those key exercises that we need to be doing on a weekly basis, a number of times each week, and not probably the massive. I mean, you've got a back catalogue. I mean, I haven't seen even some of the exercises, right? But let's fundamentally get down at some point to what we should be working on. That's going to help us drive into that dynamic stroke that Lee and Adam were talking about, and yourself.
Have you read my script? I'll come on to that right at the end. But
I gave up halfway, mate. Sorry about that.
This is where language is really important. The reason I asked you about Dragon Ball, because I don't know that term, but when I talk about, I call it the ice zone. So imagine the old Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. You've got an area in front of you. Imagine it's a Swiss ball. And if you're talking about different sports, it's the impact, contact, or engagement zone. It's that area where you're naturally strength and dexterous. So when Lee's talking about, you're not overextending beyond that, and that's exactly what you mean. So it's the same thing, but if Dragon Ball plays in Hong Kong, that's the term we use. So I'm talking about the ice zone or Vitruvian Men. You think, well, what are you talking about? Exactly what I mean. That's exactly the point. Lee, any points on that so far?
No, they're all good points, and they're all things that we can all discuss and try out. I mean, it's the idea, it's the flow of ideas that we want, and I think all of us have got our own interpretation. Actually, I think all of us know exactly what we're doing. It's the question of like getting our heads together, and it's the terminology used, and then just sort of sitting through the nuts and bolts, and then coming up with a definite plan of what we're going to do. And as long as everybody understands what we're talking about, and they can change accordingly, we can try them accordingly and get results, right? It's when you get people that don't change you say we're going to try this, but they don't actually change. They just do their same, same whatever. We need to make the differences in the boat when we're actually trying stuff out. And then we can get stuff on paper, we can get times in, and we can also see how we feel. I mean, it's not always just on paper. It's how do we feel when we're making this boat go doing X stroke?
Absolutely.
And then talking about it. I mean, you've got to talk about it. I mean, you know, if you're in a normal theme, you know, you just want to get off the water and go and have a beer. So no one really talks about it unless you have a good talk with your buddies that you know they talk sense. Otherwise, you don't really get to the bottom of things. And it's really, you know, it's really good to talk to people that know or have got a great idea of what they think and do. So, you know, of course, talking about it's great.
Yeah. But as we say, there's a period of not so much consultation, but then once we decide what we're doing fairly soon, then that's what we're going to do. That's all. But everyone understands that. So
when I first started talking tonight, I was just looking down to give an idea or a picture or a start point where I think we should start, as my idea anyway, and then we can go from there and start to produce what we think is going to be the stroke for us as a team.
Yeah. Let me bring in Karen for a minute. Karen, as a long distance swimmer, when you think about it, it's catch, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
how do you, when you swim, I'm not doing a bit of swimming, but how do you teach catch in swimming? I mean, or maybe different terminology.
Well, it is very much entering, you know, in a very streamlined way, not too far, not too stretched, very, very similar to the dragon boating, not too far out, because you lose the strength if you reach too far.
Yeah.
And you have that rotation then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you can get your lats involved in it, and your hips rotate too. Because someone said to me once, swimming is a flat stroke. It's not a flat stroke. You're using your whole body because you're reaching forward. And I think, you know, yes, we're sitting down in the boat, but it's a similar sort of action, because you want to push as much water as you can in the opposite direction, you know, or push yourself forward.
I'll tell you why I asked the question. Last time I was in Hong Kong, I did a session with Buzz, and I can't remember his name. There was a gent in the boat who was quite a good quality fencer. Okay. I've been chatting through. He may still be paddling, but it was fairly high up in the hierarchy of fencing. And he said to me that fencing has got absolutely nothing to do with dragon boat. And I said, I bet you by the end of this session we'll find a number of connections or a number of similar concepts. And we did, in terms of the way you're using your body. The only thing that they do in fencing that you don't necessarily do in dragon boating is you have a series where you do a feint. Well, I want you to do something, so I do this to deceive you. But apart from that, if you think about it, the concept of sport or performance sport is taking a body and using as effectively and efficiently as possible. So I do a bit of swimming, not so much in the UK, certainly in Cyprus. And I'm swimming along, I'm thinking, I'm just practicing paddling here. It's exactly the same, exactly what you're talking about. I'm not reaching too far, so I'm inside my ice zone or your dragon ball. So I'm not outside my area of strength and dexterity. I'm engaging my lat, I'm pulling through, I'm using the hips. I'm not just swimming flat. So you see what I mean? There's lots of stuff you can be doing there, which is working the same muscle groups in the same way.
Yeah, and it's finding, like with dragon boating, and the erg as well, really, that how many strokes make it the optimum point of, so that you're using everything, all your power to go as fast as possible.
Yeah. Because it comes to point, absolutely. Because you're either we're going for boat speed, not body speed. So you can be on your ergo doing 50 strokes a minute and really working hard, but it's just not effective. Yeah. But there are times in a dragon boat or in a boat or a canoe or whatever it's going to be, where some shorter, sharper, effective strokes are going to get you up and over past somebody, psychological advantage, and go again. And that's really when we're talking about starts. You know, a shorter, more punchy, more explosive start, because we all know the benefit of being in a line of boats and you've got your nose ahead. Psychologically, you're ahead. It's just easier to race from that position than trying to race from behind, because you're building up that tension that's just of no value to you, and of course you're going through rough water as well. So it's really interesting. But just before we just round off a little bit, is Lee mentioned about using your muscles intelligently in the right sequence, and that's why I like rowing ergo as opposed to paddling ergo. I use paddling ergos, but because there's a tendency to pull out the back, so you're teaching a bad stroke, and unless you've got one of these new ergos where you're pulling from higher up, you tend to be pulling from down, so you tend to hammer the catch, which is not what we're doing. The good thing about rowing ergos is the way you're using the posterior chain or your range of muscles is exactly the right sequence, even though the actual activity is different. You think about it, you've got an ergo, you don't just work your arms, do you? It starts from the feet, through the back, into the arms at the end. And that's really what we're looking at in terms of dragon boat or paddling generally. So that's why I quite like that myself. Okay. Just before I talk about the 6 of the best thing, any other points from the floor? Because I'm keen that Simon or Rod or Vanessa. Hello, Vanessa. David, any points? Okay. We're coming up on an hour. Any? I mean, we'll talk more about this, but I think an hour is probably about right. But Lee, any concluding comments from you before I talk about my little 6 of the best thing?
No, not really. I mean, there's not enough people here tonight to listen to what we've got to say. It'd be nice if we had like a bigger audience. You know, I mean, everything else that's been said is all relevant and it's all good. It's good, you know, swimming perspective, paddling, outrigger, you know, everything. It's all good. It's a great start. It's just a question now of hoping to get on the water and putting it together. Which is wrong. Does anybody actually know what's going to happen tomorrow? Whether we can get out in a dragon boat?
Chip in there, Lee. The yacht club are planning to start dragon boating on Saturday. I haven't heard what the arrangements are, group size and separation distance and everything like that.
It's
that's
maximum 8 per boat.
Oh right, okay.
Okay.
Well, that's our interpretation. But let's see if the police turn up at the beach afterwards. Say hello.
The last relax.
Isn't that just for tight end tigers or stormies?
Okay.
Reprobates.
Okay, just before we go around the room, 6 of the best, right?
Right.
By the 1st of March, I'm going to publish what the selection criteria are. By this time, we normally go for 6 gym-based exercises. Now, I'm sure if I sat down with Jonathan, Adam, David, anybody, you could come up with 6 good paddle exercises. I've got my own ideas, which I'm happy to share with anybody. But what I'm going to ask people to do is give me your 6 best paddling exercises. Yeah, whether it's deadlift or whatever. The only caveat I'll add to that is it has to be accessible. So much as I like pull-ups, then if we're going to train people in pull-ups, we've got to have something that it's going to inform a selection criteria. Then we've got to train people how to do it properly and all the precursor exercises. So what I'm going to ask you, anybody who wants to contribute, give me your 6 best exercises and tell me why. So if you're
paddling,
well, yes, paddling, but this is paddling will be one of the selection things. There'll be a paddling thing, there'll be an ergo thing, there'll be a dragon boat pull, and there'll be some gym-based exercises. And because we do different things in different parts of the world, then people will do 3 out of the 4 or do 4 if you want. So if Jonathan says to me, for example, just pick your, he says bent over row, yeah, or whatever, I'll say fine, bent over row, 50% body weight or whatever. Why? Because this, yeah. So it's just an invitation, give me a 6 best, and all we're going to do is we're going to come up with these 6 that are most useful, and then that will inform our preparation, because apart from being the strength and conditioning selection criteria, then that's how we're going to base the strength work around that, yeah? So I like the idea of having some agency from the crew, and this is of the crew in Hong Kong, the crew in Dubai, Chris in Mauritius, UK, and wherever else, yeah? So I'll put that out, but I'll give it a bit of thought, but we'll think about that over a week or so, and then we'll go with that. Because I certainly don't want to say, right, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. The chances are we're going to come up with pretty much the same sort of exercises, yeah? Okay, fine. So I'll give that some thought. I'll stick it out on the email and we'll collate that together. So enough from me. Lee, any concluding points? Thank you very much for that. Excellent. Really good.
No, really, no. All good.
Brilliant. John, thank you. Any points, John?
No, not at all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Karen.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Simon. Okay, from Simon, I think. Guy, Guy.
Yeah, no, all good. Great to hear different differences and opinions and hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Good to see you, my friend. David.
Nice.
All good, thank you. Looking forward to being on the water and putting all this into practice.
Just a point on that, get flexible. What we don't want you to do is have a long layoff and then jump in the boat, go mad and get injured. So that's all that resistance band, that's what that's all about. Anyway, thank you. Adam.
Oh, can't bother me. No, all good. Thank you, everybody. It's great.
Brilliant. And thank you for your points earlier. Rod, any points from Rod?
No, I'll save it. Not this week. Thanks.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. And last but not least, Ness. Hello, Ness.
She's plugged in somewhere.
Okay, okay, Ness, good to hear from you, or good to see your name at least. Okay, no worries then. Thank you very much, everybody. 12:29 or 7:29 there. Have a great week, and I'll stick out some returns for you very shortly. See you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, everybody.
Ciao.